So hi everyone, welcome to your travel itinerary college to Now Boarding College. We are going to present, Simon Lee is going to present about admission trends, and we'd like to thank first our sponsors, the Princeton Review Philippines, which is Simon's company, AEG Student Services, LIMS Review Center, Study International, AIM Philippines, and some universities that you would be seeing in our college fair, ICLA at Yamanashi, Gaokin University, and Syracuse University. So without further ado, I'm introducing Simon Lee as our speaker, and he would share his screen.
Okay, great, thank you. 1 second, let me get set up here first. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep talking, assuming everything is going through okay, right? If anyone, actually, I'll start with a video just for, we're gonna start with like an icebreaker quiz. Then afterwards, I'll take it off, just in case, it messes with the bandwidth and such. So this is a little bit background on myself. If anyone has, so we're gonna do a Q&A later as well. If anyone has any questions about my life experiences, whatever, happy to talk about it as well. Yeah, I guess one thing that's not here that is relevant is actually I grew up in the Philippines. I was there from 1-year-old all the way through high school. So I went to ISM, if any of you guys are from there, but I was K-12 there. And then I moved away for college, worked in actually many different places, but I started in Chicago and then worked around. And then I eventually started this business 7, 8 years ago. Okay. Great. Okay, so as I mentioned, let's start with the icebreaker quiz, right? Just, there's no pressure at all. If you don't know any of these answers, no problem at all. It's just to, get this, I guess, a conversation flowing. So higher ed institutions, this is colleges, universities in the US, right? How many colleges, universities do you think there are in the US? Okay, right, so it's like Ivy League, says the top 100 universities. What else are there, right? Okay, so it's estimated 4,000 to 5,000. A lot of schools, right? A lot of schools out there, a lot of good ones, right? So if the goal is to just have an opportunity to study abroad, there are so many choices, right? And there's so many schools that would take you almost no matter your profile or background, right? Okay, maybe not quite literally no matter what, but there are tons of schools, tons of seats. Okay, and I wanted to start with this point because I think a lot of students, a lot of parents, especially, I guess I talked to, rightfully so, they come in seeking the common NYU, USC, right, UPenn, UCLA, UC Berkeley, Harvard, Stanford, right? There's so many schools out there, right? And not all of them are going to require like perfect SATs or really top grades, and these are still very recognizable brand name, high quality schools, right? So there are many. Yeah, if you guys haven't really looked into this, I encourage you guys to do your research and look around. Okay, how many Ivy Leagues? How many Ivy Leagues are there in the top 10 specifically? Okay, just in the top 10. Okay, so there are 5 out of 8 total. And yeah, I guess this one I want to clarify, right? A lot of times some students or parents will learn of the Ivy Leagues, or I'm aiming for an Ivy. It's like transcended now beyond the literal Ivy League of what, like when you think of what that league means, so now it's just an abstract term for all these top schools, right? So there are many other non-AVs, right, that are very good, right, very popular. Okay, how many US universities are there in the world top 100? Okay, now, maybe this is my opinion, but I do think the QS media publication, I do think they're a little bit, they tend to be skewed away from the US, right? They tend to balance it out a lot more. So that in mind, how many US universities would you place in the top 100. Okay, so this is how they break it down. Right? They only put 27 US schools in the top 100. They had 26 from Asia, 34 Europe, 7 Australia, et cetera, et cetera. The point is, again, there's a lot of choice out there, right? A lot of good schools. Okay, the most important factor on one's college apps. This one, I'll just spoil it right away. It's your grades. Okay, yeah, it starts with this. Of course, with a weak GPA, you can still make up for it, but this is something you don't want to mess up, right? Regardless of what kind of school you go to. Okay, great. So actually, I'm going to take the video off now. Just in case. All right. So today's theme is admissions trends, right? What's been going on? I mean, of course, we had COVID, right, for now, what, 2.5 years. But as we normalize more, right, what's been going on? This was an interesting phenomenon that popped up over the past year or so. And it was interesting at first. I remember, I had some students from like ISM, BSM, et cetera, who hypothesized like early on in Corona that actually there was going to be grade inflation. And then they were noticing, like, I think a lot of their classmates were getting really good grades. Like everyone was getting good grades. And interestingly enough, right, and I saw this article and sure enough, they were right. So I'm not saying necessarily schools in the Philippines. This is just a broad publication. But I think a lot of teachers, maybe they weren't sure how to adjust, right, with the remote learning. Probably there's a lot of parental pressure, and they probably, there's a lot of not wanting to disservice the students, right? So, and I think also the remote setup, right, there must have been a lot of, like, for example, I don't remember, okay, I'm not sure if it applied this year as well, but I think early on, was it 2020 or 2021? I think the AP exams were open book even, right? So things like this would, that would, I presume, would contribute to some form of inflation, right, of scores. So, what is it? Yeah, so it's these kinds of things. And yeah, if you just Google this, right, you'll see so many publications or media sources covering this phenomenon. So why does this matter? Right, unfortunately, if everyone's grades look good, right, that even more puts the burden on you, right, to stand out. And if you go to a school that did not, give grade inflation and in fact made things worse, then that's even more unfortunate. Okay, so it's said earlier. So I mean, just cut it down to this 8 because the other ones just don't really matter. But or they're not as important for today's discussion, especially. But it starts with grades in like college prep courses, relevant courses to what you're saying you're interested in studying, AP, IP, IB, things like this, right? And then you have your like all your other courses, right? Whether it's like CLE or PE or whatever else you're taking. So it all still matters, but just less so. Right? And things like, are you challenging yourself to the fullest? What were your test scores like? Essays, recommendations, etc. Your extracurriculars, and then a bunch of intangible factors. Okay, so these are like the main factors of how you're going to be evaluated. Okay, and as I was referring to intangibles and other qualities underlying those core categories, and yeah, so some examples would be things like diversity, inclusion, and diversity is not just by ethnicity or race, right? It's by income as well, by any disabilities, gender orientation, many other ways, right, to present yourself as a diverse student. If you guys are not familiar with the first generation, if you're a first generation student, then you're the first in your family, in your extended family, you're first to go to college, right? So yeah, there are actually a lot of students, kids out there, right, whose parents didn't even never got the chance to go to college. All right, so these are additional, these are additional intangibles. The fit aspect, right? You're fit with the school culture, you're fit with the program. How you demonstrate how much you want to go to that school, how much you even know about that school, right? These are also things that can differentiate. Of course, your essays, your activities, your recommendations, they all combine to form a story about yourself, right? It puts a picture of yourself, your personality, your top qualities, right? Because you can imagine from the admissions officer's standpoint, right? They just have these like applications full of text, right? Of hard stats and sure your essays and your responses and such, but they all need to combine to form a person, right? A person that they can relate to, right? And they can form a connection with. Okay, and then this is all kinds of unique contributions to your community, to your school, right, etc. These are also other ways that you can differentiate yourself. Okay, so today's presentation, I'm gonna include both the good and the bad, right? Like what's going on in the world, right? Like related to admissions. And this story, I don't know if you guys caught this, but this came out I think like a year or two ago, so not that long ago. But it was really interesting to see because admissions officers do like to say that it's like very obvious to them when students are exaggerating or when they're lying about something. But I guess some slip through the cracks, right? And this was a famous example, right? So there's a student who I think she graduated from UPenn. She graduated from UPenn, and then I think she became a Rhodes Scholar, and then she even won like some kind of grant to pursue her master's in Oxford. And if I remember the article right, among the details in her story was that she was homeless when she was young, right? She was queer, first generation, low income, right? So all the things we talked about in the previous slide, right? And then I have no idea even how she got found out, right? But there are even people like this, right? And then I guess someone caught her somehow, and so this is more for fun. Of course, I'm hoping to do the opposite of encouraging you guys to do stuff like this, right? Definitely don't do what these guys did, right? But the student on the right here, or not a student, but you guys know Mindy Kaling, famous actress. I think she's like in, what's it called, Ocean's 8? I don't remember if that's the name of the movie, but she's in The Office as well, or I think featured in The Office as well. But her brother, this is her brother, and I think he wrote this book. If I remember the story right as well, I think so he's Indian, and I believe he was trying to apply to med schools, but then he didn't do well in school. He didn't go to a good undergrad, and he just knew he was not going to get in anywhere. So he pretended to be black. Actually got in. I don't think he went because then he wrote this book, right? Basically outing himself and such, right? But so yeah, very controversial again, but this is like some of the bad stuff, right, that happens. Okay, and then you have all these other things that you've probably heard of in some way or another, right? Like you guys know the celebrity scandal, right? It was like all over the news when it was happening. They made a Netflix movie out of it as well, right? Anyway, so the point is, right? I mean, of course, there's most majority. I don't know what percent it would be, but most are very legitimate. There is a big gray area of how some people treat their apps, and just even from my experience, rarely turns out well, right? Just from word of mouth and what I hear from others in the network and such, right? Like when people start to like go into this gray area, right? And of course, there's a lot of things that are just not cool, right? But all in all, right, this is just, again, the good and the bad, right? This is just what the world of admissions is like, or has been going through. Okay, so this is not my student, right? I just found this popped up randomly on like Yahoo, like the media, the website, and I just thought it was an interesting example of someone who I do think has a pretty interesting, legitimately differentiated story, right? And like some things that stuck out to me, right? Just if you see in the bottom, right, in the second paragraph, it's like Korean American immigrant, right? She like battled a very serious illness, right, Crohn's disease. I thought it was really interesting already that she is interested in Italian and American studies, right? So she's already in college, right? But to even be interested in these studies, she probably, I'm just guessing here, but she probably even maybe learned Italian in high school, right? Or demonstrated some interest in that culture in the past, right? Now, I bet you on top of all this, she probably was valedictorian or one of the top students in her school, in addition to acing the SATs, right? She probably was just an awesome student, probably had, a lot of top leadership positions, right? Right, but even with all of those, those like strong achievements, I'm just saying that there are a lot of students who will still get rejected at these top schools, right? Yeah, whether it's Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, et cetera, right? So yeah, there is this big burden and pressure to try to differentiate yourself. Okay, and this is more for fun, but these are real majors at these schools, right? I had no idea there was a bagpiping major at Carnegie Mellon, Egyptology major at Brown, right? Pop music at USC, etc. Okay, so especially if you have unique interests and yeah, you maybe want to pursue it as a secondary major or a minor or in some other way, right? You have a very unique profile, right? This is where you want to understand your schools and why those schools are really good fits for you. Okay, some additional trends. Yeah, and more or less things are back to normal. The international enrollment has bounced back. It decreased a lot at the beginning. Understandably so, right? No one was going to fly. No one was going to go to, like from the Philippines. It was a lot where we're not going to take the risk and go to the US anymore. But yeah, it's been on the way back up. Applications have just been continuously going up. So yeah, it didn't, like COVID didn't slow down the number of apps. In fact, after COVID hit, it for some reason went up 10%, and more people applied. Well, I should clarify that it wasn't more. It was slightly more people who applied. It was that more students were applying to more schools. Okay, but that does disrupt the picture more, right? It does in the end create more applications that these schools receive, right? So it does like confuse things for them, right? Acceptance rates, understandably, all plummeted, right? Especially among the more popular schools. Right. So, but in a sense, or what's the trade-off? Well, it is much easier to apply these days, right? There's a lot more free advice. There's a lot more accessible, like consulting, coaching, support. A lot more accessible test preparation, right? Heck, even now, a lot of schools are still test optional, right? So applying has, in a sense, never been easier. Yeah. So these are just some quotes. Yeah, straight from the mouths of these admissions officers, or like leaders at these schools, just commenting about the process. Okay, so yeah, this one may be kind of obvious, but admission rates going down, increasing uncertainty. Yeah, limited space. Unfortunately, yeah, they turn down. I think most admissions officers often like publicly say this, right? How it is a tough job for them. I forget which school it was now that was saying this. Something like for every like one that they take in, there are like 7 others or something, or whatever it is, like 7 others that who they would have been like equally happy with, or they they just regret to turn away because they were really good too. Okay, so yeah, it's a tough situation, right? The increasing demand, applications going up. Well, the shrinking seats aspect was, I guess, there's a lot of deferrals, and for some schools that really makes a difference. For some schools, they like the freshman campus or freshman quota is fixed, and like I think for Duke this was a real problem last year, right? When like the class before them deferred, or like 10% of them deferred, or something like that, right? It really affects the following year. So it is like shrinking seats in a sense. Okay, what's another trend, right? SAT, there was a period of time when SAT and ACT was optional. For a lot of schools are now starting to turn back to required, but in a sense, it was never really optional. So I mean, so here is the MIT, Georgetown, Georgia Tech. It's historically schools that have tended to like this test more or appreciate the value of the standardized test. Right, but it was never really optional in that. Even UChicago, this is pre-pandemic, you see it's 2018, they were one of the first like big name schools that decided to make it optional. Okay, but it's not optional for, I feel like most of you guys in this call right now. It's not optional for most students applying for university in the US. In that, it's right now it's optional because of COVID still, if it's difficult to take, right? And it's optional for students who cannot afford to prepare and or take the exam. Like that's what this was designed for. So you see Chicago, as they say the above, right? They say on their website, right? We expect that vast majority of students will still take it and submit it. Yeah. So sure. So if you're avoiding the SAT because you think it's gotten easier, like, oh, like I don't need to take this. They're going to treat me the same. No one will know for sure, I guess, right? There's no data that could possibly reveal that. But yeah, I mean, just know that the stats are against you. So I'm going to jump ahead, in fact, to this slide, right? But the raw numbers, right, just generally support those students who submitted their tests. They had higher acceptance rates. Okay, now we the statistician analysis of this side of this is we still can't say cause and effect, right? We don't know it's because of these tests, right? Probably more likely is that the students who had good scores, it's probably higher correlation that they also had good grades, right, and good performance overall, right? They probably prepped a lot more in general, right? That's probably more what this is. But either way, right, if you're going to try to pick one side of the stat to be on, right, you probably want to be on the test submission side. Okay, so to go back one slide, it was just a quote right on Princeton Dean of Admissions. Right, so yeah, a lot of these schools are still optional technically, right? But if you can get a good score, you should always do it if you can. Okay, this is just like a random graph found online. I wouldn't take it so literally. It's the same point. The same point. Okay, yeah. So this little bit, I won't spend much time on it. It's just like a slide or two, but you really want to make sure you know your schools, especially the more competitive ones. They often give you a chance to talk about why you want to go to the school, right? And often, if you're starting with pretty superficial ideas that spring from you not really even knowing the school that well, it's already almost doomed, right? Your essay is unlikely to reach even like a minimum level of quality. Right. So this slide is more like know your schools is like early admissions advantage, right? Or early application advantage, right? For some schools, it's a little bit stronger than others. Pretty much any early decision school, there will be a clear advantage to applying early. Some early action schools, I would say that still holds. Other ones, it doesn't really matter. But this is pretty scary if you look at it this way, right? So for Harvard's recent batch, right, 8% acceptance rates early, right, 2% regular, right? So what is this like? Yeah, like 35-ish%, right, that got accepted early. All the seats were already filled. Okay, and something else, that's not. I guess it can be both advantage and disadvantage, but even like the diversity distribution, right? Some schools have like single digits Asians, right? Some schools have a lot, right? So depending on that, the culture, etc. Yeah, you can be a little more strategic about how you wanna form your story or how you wanna apply. Okay, so going back to earlier, the test advantage, how much these schools care about the test, right? So I think this was from a year ago. But you see on the right side, you see schools like Georgetown, Georgia Tech. This was when they were optional technically. And not surprisingly, right? So there was, based on the data, it seemed like there was a huge advantage to submitting SAT. And you see like 1 year later, they made it required already. Right, so I mean, does that suggest then these other schools that they also actually are similar, that they really would like for you to take the test? Maybe, probably. Okay, actually, so for the sake of time, we'll skip this part. I don't think actually, oops, sorry, let me just skip ahead to, actually, sorry, let me just skip a little bit more ahead. Yeah, I'll just start with this. Okay. So get second, third, fourth opinions, right? I like whenever I meet new students and parents, I don't mean this in a condescending way. I've been doing this for a long time. It's probably why I feel this way, but I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? A lot of bad advice, a lot of actually even some things that you could just quickly Google and see is wrong or not true. So yeah, just a lot of free advice out there. If you go to a traditional school, you have your school counselor at the very least. But even then, right, just ask alumni, ask consultants, etc. Yeah, definitely not a game of checking boxes. If you see your app that way, you're probably already not going to get in, right? If you're thinking like, oh, they need a minimum of this score, or they're looking for a minimum of this, right? I need to fulfill like these minimum requirements on the curriculum side. It's probably already not. Like you need to beat it, right? You need to, yeah, you need to like, almost like be so attractive a candidate, right, that they can't refuse. Okay, so yeah, it is much easier to apply these days, but it is that much more competitive. Yeah, last year was quite rough actually all around the Philippines. Yeah, I think ISM actually was still pretty solid. I know like Brent had some good acceptances too. Yeah, but like some of the other schools, it was a pretty dry year. Okay, so sure, like whether it is schools or independent help, either way, you just should look into it and understand what the differences are and what puts you on this best path forward. It is a 4 years of your life, that alone is a huge thing, right? But like I'm also not one to think that college, it's like, if you don't get into Harvard, your life is over. Like I'm the opposite of actually that. But that said, right, it is important, right? It's going to set you up for the next step, right? Your early career, possibly the next road to maybe pursuing grad level, right? Master's, PhD, whatever your plan is, right? Where you build your, where you start your first job, right? All these kinds of things makes a big difference. And those things are, of course, really important, right? That's then the next step, right? Which gets the next step and so forth. Okay, so yeah, just quick shameless plug about ourselves. Yeah, if you ever want to engage our help, so if you guys have ever seen our office, we're in Surendra. If you guys are Mary Grace's, it's like right above that. You'll see our signage on the second floor. Well, our office is closed right now. We're operating fully online, but we are hoping to open that up soon. The office is still there. You'll see it, but it's just closed. We haven't opened it since because of Corona. But in the meantime, yeah, if you guys want to have some quick chats or you want to inquire about some things, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Yeah, we have per hour packages. We have unlimited hour packages. Of course, we have test prep and tutorials as well for school tutorials. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we actually do attach a free consulting session to our tutorial or test prep packages. So, okay, so it's far from the end. If you guys want to reach out, you have information. Okay, and yeah, feel free to just ask questions in the Q&A. I'm gonna just start. I see 2 right now, so I'm gonna start answering these. Can I follow up my SAT scores after applying for the EA/ED? So the question is, yeah, sorry, I assume you mean, can you take December after taking the October? For EA/ED, you cannot. Like December will not count, but it will count for regular. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. So it's like this: you take the October SAT, you'll get your result in time for the November early decision deadline. So you will be able to technically submit after seeing your SAT score. But there's no guarantee you're going to get in early. So if you do need to take again, then you would need to sign up for December, because SAT is like first week of December, and you're not going to hear back about early until usually like mid-December, early mid-December, depending on. So it's a tricky timeline. Yeah. So you would need to sign up for SAT, take it again, and then you'll get your early results. And if you get in, then great, right? I mean, sure, you wasted another Saturday, you spent whatever, $50 or whatever it was, whatever, right? If you get in, great. If not, then at least you took the SAT, or you have the December. All right, is it true that the bar standard for Asians in college apps is much higher? So I like, simple answer, I would say yes. In that, the Asians are, I think, like an overrepresented bunch globally, and as is, I mean, I guess it's stereotyping a bit, but you tend to see a lot more academic strength, right, across the Asian applicants. So, and no matter what, right, these universities are not going to take in like 80% Asians. It's just not. I mean, they'll never admit that, but it's like, it's like fact, basically, right? They will not take in like 80% Asians of their pool. They need to keep it diverse, right? So, in that sense, yes. But yeah, I guess my follow-up was gonna be more philosophical. Like, I think it's, there were advantages there, there are hidden advantages, so it's all kind of fair in the end. Yeah, and I guess it could also matter technically, like what Asian ethnicity you're applying under or through. Like, if you're applying, let's say, like India, Korea, China to Harvard, Stanford, I think that bar is really, really, really high. Right, that bar is, yeah, like you have to be like, I don't even know what the example of this would be, but you have to be like, savior of the world or something. Like, it's very high, very difficult to get in. But here's where it can matter a little bit, right? If let's say you are Indian or Korean or Chinese, or but you're a U.S. citizen, right? Then you get treated as an American, right? Then you're not really an international student, so it's also a little bit different there. Okay, but like, just an example of a student I remember, like looking over the app of, right? It's like a student from Korea. It was like a local school in Korea. He took like 11 or 12 APs, all fives. For me, that's still incredible. And that's like not even his school's, like, I don't think that was even their main thing. Is it still risky not to take SAT if you're going to enroll in a test optional university? So the test optional thing, it depends. Like, some schools are test blind. If they're test blind, even if you submit, it doesn't matter. They're not going to consider it, or they're not allowed to consider it. But if they're test optional, then if you submit it, they will look at it, right? And it will help you if it's good. So as far as, is it risky? Like, if it's a bad score, then you have no choice but to kind of not send it if it's a bad score, because that's just going to hurt you. But if you have a good score, then you send it no matter what. If it's kind of on the fringe, really depends. Then that's where I would ask a counselor or get some advice on it. Is it okay not to take SATs? So yeah, I mean, that was a big part of the presentation, right? What is it? If you can get a good score, you should. But if you don't and you submit, you have a chance, right? I mean, like, you can. You're not going to be rejected for not having it. So yeah, if it's going to be really difficult for you to take it, or yeah, it's going to be really burdensome for you to study for it, prepare for it, time wise, financial resource wise, then yeah, maybe no need, right? It's not a must. For sure, I have plenty of students who've gotten into their schools without taking SAT, but the rest of their app is really good, so you have to make up for it somehow. If you're undecided what course to take for college, so the beauty of the US system, at least, is that you don't need to declare your major until like end of sophomore year, end of like start of junior year. Like, you have a lot more flexibility to explore. So you can apply even just straight undecided, right? And then you can try to figure it out on campus. It's not a wise strategy necessarily, but if you don't, if it's really part of your story and part of where you're at in your development, that's fine, right? It's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, it's tons of, I'd say, even like adults and old people who still are undecided on what they want to do with their life, right? So, it's like a lifelong pursuit and discovery. So I wouldn't. So it's all in, like, again, it's all how it balances, right? If you're undecided because it looks like you just never engaged in anything, you're uninterested in things, that's of course really bad, right? But if you're really passionate about a lot of things and you genuinely just don't know what you want to commit to, it's okay, right? No college is going to take that against you. Okay, students that don't have much exemplary grades, extracurriculars, how can they put forward a strong? Okay, well, so you hit two really important things, right? Grades and extracurriculars are important. And so if they're both not very good, then, I mean, SAT seems like the only other thing you can really control. But even that is unlikely to make up so much, right? It'll help a bit. It's not going, you have bad grades, sparse activities, you need 1500 SAT, it'll, just imagine like rounding up your app like 10%, 15% maybe in quality, but it's not going to, you can get a perfect, you're not going to get into Harvard. Sorry, I'm just being very direct there, I guess it's possible, right? But yeah, I mean, it's hard to make up for bad grades and bad activities. But if you're like grade 10, grade 11, you have time to make it up. Many other creative ways to improve your app on these sites. If you're applying in like 3 months, you might want to look at regions that don't care as much about things like extracurriculars. Okay, and there are a lot of really good schools, right? In actually even in the US, but all over the world, a lot of really good schools that with subpar grades, and even like no activities, you can still get into a lot of good schools. So you just have to find them. SAT fee waiver. If you mean from College Board, you can. That's like there's just, if you go on their, I don't know it off my memory, like off my top of my mind. Just if you go on there though, I think they'll have instructions for how you can qualify for it. But yeah, I know it's definitely possible. Yeah, in case you meant like fee waiver for like study, like test prep courses and such. So we have a policy with some schools, right? Like, so for example, where I went to school, I went to ISM. Yeah, if the counselors, right, like prove to us, right, that they are like Filipino scholars, right? They're on the scholarship program. We teach them for free. I mean, there's that, but there are things like that. All right. Which is easier, SAT or ACT? Yeah, there's no like easy, like they're companies that whose like expertise is delivering similar curves. So like I think if it's like which one is more comfortable, that one can be answered. I mean, like that one really depends on the person, on the student. But like my, I guess, unhelpful answer to this is that if you prepare for both, like 95+% of students that I've worked with and I've experienced, it doesn't matter either way. You're gonna get the same score either way if you've prepared for both properly. But yeah, I mean, they have like subtle differences, right? ACT at the least is computerized. SAT is still paper-based, right? ACT has a science section, SAT does not, right? ACT has a really fast reading section, SAT has a longer but deeper reading section, right? Math, there's a no calculator section, SAT, ACT, there you can use calculator, the whole thing. A lot of technical differences. Again, my quick answer is that it shouldn't make a big difference. Oh, okay, so I answered 2 questions with one answer. Okay, what if my school doesn't have AP tests? Yeah, I mean, a lot of schools don't administer AP exams. So you'd have to go on the College Board website and try to find where the tests you're trying to do, where they even give it. Right, so yeah, I forgot. I was looking at like 2D art the other day. I forgot which school it was now, but it was like No offense to anyone who actually goes to school. I don't remember the name even, but it was a school I've never even heard of. It was a new one to me, but it was one in the Philippines. So yeah, if you're looking to do that, it looked like there's only one school that offered it. So you would need to register for there. If you don't have ECs until sophomore year, does it hurt your app? I mean, in that, like, it hurts in that it would have been better if you had something, right? So sorry, everyone, you guys can see all the questions, right? I assume, okay, I'm assuming you guys can see the questions. If not, somebody please just let me know. But yeah, it hurts in that it would have been better if you had something, right? And I don't know. I mean, the pandemic, I understand it shut down a lot, and yeah, I get the family responsibilities for different students that meant a lot, right? But I don't know. I feel like, especially in this era, it shouldn't have stopped you from still being active and doing things. So understandable. At the same time, I wouldn't single-handedly like accept it or embrace it as an excuse or as a reason. But anyway, what can you do about it now, right? Just from now on, I guess. Yeah, just do what you can. No, if an SAT is bad, I think all these Ivy Leagues are optional still, right? So if your SAT is bad, just don't submit it. You'll still have a chance, like a real chance. If the rest of your app was good, then, or if the rest of your app is good, then yeah, it might not be needed. Okay, so yeah, so okay. How do you enroll? Yeah, it depends on what you're looking for. So again, we have standardized test prep. For actually even from like elementary to adults, we have standardized test prep. We have academic tutorials, IB, AP help, school tutorials, and we have consulting services. If you want to enroll, just reach out to the email, call a number, and then yeah, we'll onboard you from there. Right? We'll just give instructions. We'll let you know. We'll answer any questions. If you want to do if you want to have a conversation and get your questions answered, we can set that up too. So yeah, just the information's on the screen. How many people get admitted abroad? That's a good question. I mean, I don't have the numbers for this off the top of my head. They have these things online. You might have to look around a little bit for it, but like all colleges, like everywhere in the world, I don't know, like tens of thousands, hundreds. I have no idea, but it's not like 1,000. It's probably a lot more than that. As a local, so how can I increase my chances? So going to local school is not inherently a bad thing. I mean, the support to study abroad is a little bit worse, right? In like starting with the curriculum available and the consulting and resources available. Like the international schools are built to feed into, these like US, UK universities. So that is a disadvantage there. But as far as like achievement and ability for your app to look good, there's no real. I think thinking you're at a disadvantage is. I mean, like stats wise, it's kind of true, but you shouldn't look at it that way. Because as a local student, you have ample opportunities to still do and send a great app. I will add though, as far as how many Philippine students from Philippines get admitted abroad for the the top schools, I don't know, like 1 to 3 in the whole country, like for each of the top schools. So like in any given year, like Harvard, yeah, 1 to 3, 1 to 4. 4 would be a really good year already. Stanford, etc. So like as I went to Duke, right? And Duke, there are a lot of years. There's some years we take 0, some years, right? Where let's say there's no one that we wanted or no one is good or something. That's not. I don't make that decision, right? But I just, I guess I know or I hear of these things. Yeah, I mean, a lot of years we just take 1 in the whole country. So SAT online, that's next year, 2023. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, it is changing, but not yet. You have until December. But yeah, that is kind of scary, the SAT changing if you're grade 10, grade 11, yeah, it's annoying every time it changes, because at the beginning, everyone's always, you don't know what the test will be like. And I mean, we have like the sample questions and the logic and curriculum, and it's always pretty similar to the one before it, like in core, thinking skills and such, right? But as far as like the formula for how to like really maximize your score, yeah, I mean, I might like even give it a few administrations, like I might wait for the March and May to be done, and then maybe I'll like really study for it or something. Standardized testing for schools. I mean, I think mostly schools accept SAT and ACT depending on yeah, like what exact school. And most of the top schools, they accept the main standardized tests. But yeah, in case of UK, if you're doing like full IB, then you don't need to take SAT. So yeah, I guess this one really depends. I would almost just look case by case, but I'll just assume if you're like full IB and you took SAT, that's all you can possibly do, right? You're ready for any school. Smart take AP test without studying. The simple answer is no. Just because you took IB, it's not the same as AP, right? Even the style is different, and I would at least spend like 1 hour even just looking over like what format it is, right? What kind of question styles they ask, right? But I mean, but sure, if you're like an IB HL econ like genius, right? Then sure, AP micro macro probably easy, right? Probably no need to study for it. But yeah, if anything in the middle, I wouldn't just assume you can just take it and then you'll get a good result. Books, resources. So there's a lot of good, like official materials are always the best, right? The official past exams. I think those are always the best quality, right? And it just comes with the companies, they invest a lot of money into making it. So like there's like no ambiguity, no mistakes, right? Once in a while, like on the non-official stuff, you'll see like answers that are kind of vague, or just not the best style. So as far as like books, the official guides are good. If you're looking for free resources, I mean, Khan Academy, right? It's free. I think the ACT website, they provide some like low cost preparation as well, right? But with that, like free, low cost and such, I mean, you're getting what you pay for, right? I mean, if you can self-study it, then yeah, then those are fine. And in fact, resources doesn't really matter. I mean, you can just get even like a Barron's or a Princeton Review book, and if you have the discipline and like ability to self-correct and such, yeah, all of them will be okay. But yeah, official materials first, and then I would expand out into the test prep stuff. So even us, right? Even Princeton Review, of course, we use Princeton Review stuff, but we also use a lot of official stuff, right? Because for the third or fifth time or what, it's the official stuff is the best, right? It's the best way to prepare. Amount of time to study SAT. It's like if you're like an average student, an average good student, maybe a few months. If you're like one of the top students in like a really good school, maybe in 10 hours possible. If you're not an average good student, right? If you're like more average and below, several months, maybe more than a year. But more than like that time volume. Yeah, so it's if you're really curious about this, just email us, and then I think like I need to hear more about your background to be able to answer like your case. Really depends. AP test centers. So there's so many. Actually, I it's so many at the same time. I don't think it's all. So like I think BSM doesn't. I mean, I know ISM does. I want to say CISM maybe. I really don't know. You guys should just look it up. The AP test centers, but so many. SAT subject tests. There are no more SAT subject tests. So you can just cross that out. Yeah. How many schools should I apply to? Yeah, this depends too. I mean, sometimes your school might have a policy. Like ISM again, for example, they have a 10 school limit. So which is enough, right? If you plan your list right, 10 is enough. That said, if you don't have a limit, I do know some students who apply to like 30 schools, right? So it's really up to you. Um, yeah, but yeah, if you're serious about going abroad, like let's say you apply all the local schools, right? You apply UP and LaSalle and such, Ateneo, and like, and you're like genuinely okay going there. You're happy to go there, and you're like maybe quite confident you're gonna get in, and you just want to shoot the moon for a few like reach schools in the US. Then you apply just 3, 5. It's fine, right? But that is of course risky. Yeah, there is no better SAT or ACT. Yeah, there's no one easier. I'd say SAT is just more popular around the world, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily better. Without APs, okay, without APs, extracurriculars or IBs. I mean, so meaning you just have normal, like you have a curriculum without these things. If you're a straight A student, right, you're like top in your batch, sure, right? Yeah, so you don't need APs and IBs to go to top school, right? If your grades are very good, it still counts for something, right? Or it counts for a lot. Yeah, so they're not going to punish you for not having APIB, right? I mean, that's the school you went to, and you did the best you could. So, but sure, but yeah, I mean, I guess I would mix in some safeties just in case. All right, how many times should I take SAT? I'd say the median comes out probably to be somewhere like 2 to 3. You know, some take several, some get it done just once. The answer I want to give here is when you're ready, right? So if you're ready, 2, 3 times is more than enough. If you're ready. Problem is a lot of students take it when they're not ready. In which case, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of extra sittings. Books or online free resources. All right, studying SAT with books or online like that's more up to your style. I don't know, like I'm more old school, I guess. So I don't know. I don't really like studying online. You know, I like the print in front of me to annotate on things. But yeah, but then again, like a lot of my students, they work even when I send them PDFs, they just work off like on the PDF off the screen. So if you like it, the material should be similar. So I don't think that itself matters. Yeah, this whole like self-studying, free resources like Khan, it's not that different from like if you want to learn how to play golf, right? Can you watch YouTube clips, right? And can you like watch enough, learn the motions, and like be a good player? Of course you can, right? Or I think so. I think you can definitely like self-teach, right? Is it the most efficient way to do it? Probably not, right? Are there some people who will like train and try to self-teach for a long time and then not get the result they want? If that's probably majority, right? So that's really what the free versus paid difference is, right? Paid, you have like the structure and you have someone looking over you, right? IB, AP, I wouldn't nitpick on that difference. Yeah, if you do full IB or you do a heavy AP course load, both good. Class rank, if it's available, then it can be relevant, but a lot of high schools these days don't do class rank. So even the ones in the Philippines. So I wouldn't worry about this so much. It shouldn't be one of the main factors or considerations. Traits seen in student study abroad. Traits. It'd be a lot of the cliche stuff that you could imagine, right? Like strong academic potential, maturity, discipline, work ethic, right? Leadership. Yeah, I don't even know. I'm trying to also like filter my own like my head off of like it's gonna be a lot of obvious things, right? But yeah, it's just they're trying to project out who they think will excel in their school and who will make the school proud when they're alumni, right? Yeah, so it's almost like asking like what's the right combination of traits to succeed. There's no one answer to that, right? There's many ways to impress. So many ways to have your own like strength profile. Like what are traits that are not good? Like narrow-mindedness, right? Like ignorance, like arrogance, right? I don't know, defensiveness, right? These are easy things that can come across on the application. Right, like lack of originality, right? Just very cliche, very general. Poor writing ability. Lack of consistency, right? Good SAT, ACT score really depends on the school you're applying to, right? And also like what your grades look like. So if you're, I don't know, if you're applying a top 10 school, I'll say at least 1530. Can you get into top 10 school with like a 1450? Sure, you can, right? Like definitely many students have done that, but it's harder, right? If applying like NYU and you want to submit an SAT score, good score. I don't know, if I got a 1450, maybe I would be okay. Like I wouldn't feel the need to retake it. If I got a 1350, I probably would retake it. 1400, maybe I'd think about it. Okay, most important part of the app, we already talked about it earlier, but yeah, grades, SAT, everything you just mentioned, those are probably the top 4 things. Okay, the SAT question, the like writing, language, and math is just knowing concepts. I disagree with that. I mean, I think if you're trying to get like 90% accuracy on the writing and math, which is like 90% sounds good, but you got 90% of the test right. So let me do a quick calculation of what that would mean. You lose like 40, 50 points in the writing. 58, you lose like 50 points, 1500. Okay, I guess if you got like 90% accuracy, you'd still get like a 1450, something like that, right? Just like that sheer accuracy. And if you want to do something like that, I guess it's possible to just like memorize a bunch of concepts, but yeah, like if you want to go 1500 plus, it's definitely not like a memorization thing, right? There's a lot of critical thinking, a lot of really good processes, and really nuanced, detailed thinking. So the SAT also has stuff you can memorize technically, right? Like the SAT reading, but yeah, I guess your general direction and thesis, I guess I agree with you. The reading is harder to prepare for. SAT, math, English. Yeah, the math or English being easier, that really depends on the student. But if I had to give an answer, I'd say the math is easier to learn because inherently math is more logical and like formula driven, rules driven, more black and white, and it's the questions are isolated, right? Reading, even the writing and language, sometimes you need to factor in a lot of context. Fees. Yes, yeah. So there are fees. So unless you are like a Filipino scholar at one of the schools that we've worked with or we're familiar with, there are fees. So yeah, I encourage you guys to whoever's asking this, I encourage you to inquire, right? I mean, you can at least see the options because yeah, in some occasions, parents do express a certain budget, right? And then we'll let you know the best way to maximize that with us if you're interested. And of course, at that point, it's up to you, right? No pressure. We're not gonna hound you about it, right? But we'll let you know, right? If the max you can spend is 30K, we'll let you know how that's best spent, right? If the max is 56K, whatever it is, right? We'll let you know. Yeah, I don't know if you're like 3.8 GPA at I don't know, like Boston College or something, or USC, 3.8 or the 1450. I mean, like that would be fine. I mean, your GPA would matter more, your college GPA, than the SAT score. So if you have a good GPA, I might not even send the SAT, right? Unless they like explicitly ask for it. But if your GPA is low, or it's like less than 3.5, let's say, which is not even low, but if it is less than 3.5, probably would want to get higher than 1450. But even if you do, if your GPA is less than 3.5, you probably still will not transfer up. right? Yeah. All right. Ooh.
Yeah, I think that's the end of the questions. If anyone has any more queries for Simon and Princeton Review Philippines, please take a screenshot of that on the screen and you can ask more questions to him. Thank you again, Simon, for this talk, and see you all tomorrow for the next event for college fair. And Simon, would you have any last words before we end?
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, actually, that's it. Thank you, guys. Best of luck to everyone. Okay, bye.
Yep. So check our social media for any updates, and thank you, everyone.